Well, good afternoon and welcome everybody, or good morning and welcome to my Latin American winemakers who have joined us today. And also to those who I can't see. So obviously I can see, us panelists can see each other, but we can't see you, the attendees. So thank you very much for joining today. As you know, this is the first session of four. You may be coming to just one, two, or hopefully all four of today's 10th anniversary celebrations for Condor wine. So well done, Lee, on that. And we've got four great sessions for you today. I'm really pleased to be involved with this first one, which I think should be a really interesting discussion we're about to have, because I think everyone's got lots of interesting things to add. So before I introduce the panelists, just a little bit about this session. So we're going to be looking at the challenges, the risks and rewards of low intervention farming and winemaking throughout Latin America. So we've got here panelists from all over South America, from different countries, from Chile, from Argentina, from Uruguay, and from different areas within those countries. So, as I say, all of them are going to have really interesting things and different experiences of farming in a lower intervention manner. So it should be very interesting. We've got 45 minutes, and as I say, I think it will go quickly, but we're going to split the session into two halves. So starting with looking at lower intervention in the vineyard, before we go on to looking at lower intervention in the winery. Please do ask questions. I want this to be interactive if possible, and if I can get to answering the questions, I will. I think there's a tab that you tick on and then it comes up. I think we've worked out how to use it, so I should be able to answer those, and hopefully we'll have time to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panelists here so we can then get cracking with the session. So first of all, I'm going to start with, we've got Pablo Fabrino. Hi, Pablo.
Hi, Alistair.
Hola. So Pablo is owner and winemaker of Fabrino, Bodega Pablo Fabrino in Canelones in Uruguay, where he farms around 17 hectares, I think, and has some really interesting grape varieties, grapes that you might not expect to find in Uruguay. So a lot of Piemontese grape varieties, Barbera, Nebbiolo, Arnaise, and I think we're going to talk about those a little bit today. Then we have Mariana Onofre. Hi, Mariana.
Hi, Alistair.
So Mariana is the owner and winemaker of Onofre Wines, who are new to the Condor family, and we're really pleased that she's part of the portfolio, because I think Mariana's wines really add something different to the mix of Condor. So Mariana has a small-scale, family-owned winery and vineyards, and there she focuses on ancestral varieties, old vines, as well as some really interesting grape varieties, just as with Pablo in Uruguay, that you might not expect to find. So Tirol de Go, Carignan, Grenache, Mourvèdre, and we're going to talk about that because they're all grafted on to old vine rootstocks. Then we have Christian Sepulveda. Hi, Christian. And I'm sure many of you will know Bouchon family wines from Maule in Chile, and Christian's been the winemaker there for, I think, about 5 years. Is that right, Christian? About 5 years?
Yes, 5.
Exactly, about 5 years. And as I say, I'm sure many of you know them. For me, they've been one of the most important wineries in the past 10 years in Chile in pushing both ancestral varieties, specifically Pais, as well as old vines. And I think they're a very forward-thinking outfit, and lower intervention, of course, is very important for them. So I look forward to talking about old vines with Christian in this section. Then we have Thibaut Lepoutre, who's joining us from Bordeaux. I thought he was in Mendoza, but he's in Bordeaux. Hi, Thibaut.
Hi, Alistair.
So Thibaut is the winemaker and technical director of Bodega Piedra Negra, or Francois Lurton's operation in Argentina, in Mendoza. And of course, Thibaut will also know about the Francois Lurton operation that's also with Condor, which is over in Colchagua in Chile. They are certified organic and farmed biodynamically as well. So there's lots of discussion to have there. And then last but not least, we have Agustin, who's joined us from Calchaquí, from up in the north. Agustin is of Agustin Llanos Wines. I believe Agustin fell in love with the area of Calchaquí in 2006 when he visited, and is certainly making some extreme wines up there in the north with vineyards up to 3,100 meters above sea level. So good to have you here as well, Agustin.
Thank you very much. Hi, all.
No problems. So we have a mixture of organic, biodynamic, what I would call pragmatic winemaking, maybe with Mariana, where you're not certified, but you follow principles, and of course, certified and non-certified. And these are topics we're going to look at. So we're going to crack on now. As I say, I'm aware we've only got 45 minutes, but I'm going to start with, so we're going to start looking in the vineyard, and I'm going to start with a pretty general question. I'm going to ask this to Pablo, first of all, and then for the rest of you. So what does low intervention winemaking or low intervention principles mean to you, and why is it so important?
Low intervention is all about in the vineyard, it's all about to try to understand the vineyard, not just use a recipe of how to treat the vineyard, because every year it's different. So you have to understand the vineyard and use, for me, in Uruguay, that we have to spray a little bit more than the other countries now because we got humidity. We try to spray the less with the minimal synthetic chemicals. No? We try to understand the vineyard and not, for example, we are not using sulfur because we don't have downy powdery mildew in the vineyard as other places have. So we look at, we try to understand what happened in the vineyard every year and every week of the growing season.
Okay, and interesting, Mariana. How about for you? How do you view lower intervention winemaking? Why is it so important that's the principles that you follow?
Actually, for me, it's interesting because I think we discussed this in our conversations. It's like low intervention in a way means labor intensive. You need to it's hands-on. You have to work more in your vineyard manually. So all the tasks that possibly you were using, I don't know, a herbicide or something, you need to do it manually. So it means that you need to work much more, take care of everything that is happening. And I think that I agree with Pablo. It's about reading your vineyard, knowing what it needs, and having this biodiversity that you have, be there, because it's very important for the final results. So for us, it's having our sheep, having all these different components and bees and everything help us create this atmosphere that is a lot of work, but on the other hand, we don't have to use any chemical or anything to have the results.
Yeah, I think that's really nice what you said there. It's because I've often heard lower intervention winemaking referred to as hands-off winemaking. So, I don't do anything, I don't intervene. But your point is brilliant, isn't it? It's definitely not hands-off. It's far more hands-on. You need to be reacting to things that are happening, but also seeing things that are happening. So you're not spraying to avoid things. You're having to listen to your vineyard and act proactively as well. So I think hands-off, when people say hands-off, it's completely the wrong term, isn't it? It's far more hands-on winemaking.
Definitely.
And viticulture especially. And Christian, how about you? I mean, we talked there a little bit about what it means. I think I've spoken to you about this before, and I think it's allowing your grapes to express themselves, possibly, isn't it, with lower intervention? Is that how you feel?
Yeah, well, I think Mariana and Pablo took a really important point, because hand off is like when you think that low intervention is like you are sitting in the backyard, taking a glass of wine. You need to work much more, And one thing is like you need to be much more sensitive, because if you compare low intervention, maybe more conventional. In conventional, you don't think so much. You just put a recipe and you make the same thing and you spray, every 15 days. And I think it will be less work in terms of thinking, maybe more work in mechanical and product, but low intervention is more thinking and more work with your hands. So I think that is a key point. And also, for me, the low intervention express different in the vineyard and then in the wine. I think when you talk about all the attributes about terroir, you feel it much more when you work in low intervention than in conventional. I think that is the key points for me, that you express much more. It's not better or worse, you express much more what you got. I think that is one of the key points about talking about low intervention wines or low intervention viticulture. I think the expression of the place it's much more pure. I think I feel much more difference between different states or different places when you work in that way.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's brilliant. And then if we're looking, obviously there probably couldn't be many different. There's a huge difference between. Let's look at Agustin is farming at 3,000 meters above sea level, and the challenges faced by Agustin versus Pablo, who's in Canelones, with the pretty wet Uruguay. We know there's a lot of rain in Uruguay and a lot of wind. Really different climatic challenges that you both face. I mean, rainfall is not really a problem for Agustin. So Agustin, what are the challenges that you face? Obviously, at altitude, you have different issues to face with compared to Pablo's issues with rain, etc. What are your challenges?
Yeah. Exactly, Alistair. As you said, I'm completely blessed in this fantastic climate in extreme altitude, where I just have a lot of problems that Pablo has for sure. And here, I think that the challenge is just to really, as Mariana says, as Christian says, to really be sensitive and try to express the terror and this landscape and this fantastic potential of the fruit of the grape into the glass of wine. And what I realized that the most you leave the grape as it is and the fruit as it is, and you try to experience a glass of wine, the better is the wine, actually. So here, the challenge is like I always put example of being like a chef, and you have to sit and making a big soup of things, and you cannot touch it. You really have to read it and follow the grape as it is, and trying not to put yourself and your mind to just understand the grape and the different terroirs. We're working here with 12 different, very little places, and the 12 of them are completely different, and we have to treat them completely different in those 12 different things. So for sure, it's much more work and much putting your sensitive. I love to talk about rational viticulture and sensitive viticulture. I think it's all about that.
Yeah, that's great. And then Pablo, going back to you in Uruguay, I know when we spoke before, you said something interesting about the success that you've had, obviously with the climatic, not difficulties, the climatic situation that you have with rain. Certain grape varieties you've found surprisingly have performed better for you than other grape varieties.
Yes, the Italian, the Nebbiolo, Arnese are very resistant to the weather we have in Uruguay, to the humidity. So I'm very surprised because of I found out that Nebbiolo is easy to grow in Uruguay. It's easier than Tanat, for example. Arnese never get downy mildew, so it's amazing, or botrytis. But I also have, as the other growers, I put a lot of work in the vineyard. Every day I walk the vineyard and see the weather forecast, and see what we have to do in the vineyard. Every year is different. Depends if it's a warmer year, we keep more the leaf. If we have a cooler year, we take out we pluck the leaf, more, keep the clusters more with the sun.
Yeah.
Sun, but it depends on every year.
And it's interesting. So why? So you planted Nebbiolo not expecting it to do very well, yet it clearly has done well. Why is it? Is it because it's a thin-skinned grape, isn't it, Nebbiolo normally? So I'm surprised that it's so resistant.
I don't know. I choose Miquette. Miquette biotype, it's a special clone, and it resists very well. Never get botrytis. It's amazing how it works, and the production is very small. Produce about 8 tons, 7 tons per hectare, and also the leaf is very small, so that maybe that helps the plant or the variety to keep healthier than the others.
Interesting, isn't it? So we've had a question come through from Thomas, which is asking, he'd like to know how much of your time you spend in the vineyard. Thibaut, I'm going to ask you for this one. You know, how important is it for you, especially being biodynamic? I imagine it's very important being in the vineyard, and what percentage of your time is spent in the vineyard?
Well, as Mina said, I like the word that Mina used, that is, you have to read your vineyard to understand it, not just to cure disease, but to read it and understand how you can manage it. The main issue that we had in Argentina was the weed, managing the weed. It has been very difficult because we have a very stony soils where there is no tool that can work properly. And we have 150 hectares. It is almost impossible to remove it by hand. So we had to think a lot to find a solution for that. And finally, we work now with sheep, where we bought some masks in New Zealand in order that they will not eat the shoots. So all this problem and the solution, you can see it only if you work a lot and walk a lot in your vineyard. So when I'm in Argentina, I spend, I would say 30% of my time in the vineyard, 20 in my own vineyard and 10% in the other vineyard that we are managing, the suppliers, I would say. But I see a lot of vineyard, not only the vineyard, our own estates, and Mendoza is very big. So I get a lot of road to see a vineyard, which is 1,500 meters high. I spend a lot of time in the car too.
Yeah, I can imagine. Agustin spends a lot of time in the car too, up in Calchaquí. But Christian, I'm going to ask you on that as well. I thought that's really interesting what Thibaut was saying about having the sheep in the vineyard, and this idea of adapting is so important. With, you know, when you don't have just a recipe to follow, just to spray this, spray that, you have to adapt. You have to come up with things. There's always a solution to these problems. But what other challenges have you faced that has made you come up with a slightly interesting solution to perhaps pests or something else in the vineyard?
Well, a little bit. I would like to spend more time in the vineyard. Always not enough. Huh? the first things. But I want to talk about your question. But I think one thing about low intervention also is to read, I will say, the place. And one thing is to have the variety that is suitable for the place. And also we'll move talking about old wines too, because if you got a variety, maybe it's not suitable to the place, maybe you will need to work more, intervene more maybe. But if you got the vines or the variety that's suitable to the place, I think that connection, if you start to look, backward, looking at from the beginning, if you got the variety that is suitable for the place, I think the low intervention, it will work much more better. I think in general here, one of the issues that we got in the Maule area is like the long rainfall. So one of the things is like the rain, you got, if you don't, you can pray, but it doesn't work every time. So your bank account of water, it will be the soil. So we've been change management, you open the soil in winter, then you close in the summer. And the issue in Chile that you got 5 months that are dry. So there's not too many things you can do. You need to load the yield, you need to read the year. So it will be dry, maybe you lose a little bit bunches. There's no another way. Also, you can work in mulch a little bit to cool down the temperature of the soil. I think there are the two things that we're working now is like got less fruit, so you need less. You got less leaf. You need less water to the vine, and how you keep the water in the soil. That's the two main things that we face here in the. You need to mind that in Maule, the last 10 years, we have the rainfall about 800 millimeters, the last 30 years. And the last 10, we are around 500. So the issue has been, you need to think about how you get a good maturity until the end. I think for us are the two things, also working the new things for us in a few stages, work a little more with cover crops, more than moving the soil. Because sometimes you can think that the cover crop will compete against the water of your vine, but it's not like that. It helps also about the structure of the soil that retain the water too. So I think the two things is like how you use the tradition that we always open the soil in winter and then you close it, and also this not new things, but to use cover crop or use mulching also to cool down the temperature of the soil. That are the two things that we've been working and we have seen.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, would you say then, because obviously when we're talking about older vines, and I'm going to ask Mariana something on this as well in a minute on old rootstocks. So when we have older vines, you know, in Chile, there's no secret that there's vines down, you know, I've seen some in Itata that are 200, 250 years old, whatever it may be. And I know you have 100-year-old País vines, you know, just for fun, they're just lying around everywhere. And it's incredible the old vine heritage that there is in Chile. Would you say then that it was because of their established root systems that it's easier to farm these older vineyards than it is establishing a new vineyard? If you're establishing a new vineyard in Maule at the moment with 500 millimeters of rain, I imagine you'd have some problems with establishing that vineyard sometimes. So is it also very important for if you're going to farm, you know, with no irrigation, is it also important then for sustainability that we really look after these older vines for the future?
One thing is like when you look to the future, you just need to look to the past. You know, we're not inventing the wheel, at least not mine, but we are using. Well, we are lucky in Chile. We are blessed. We are, I know, 10,000 hectares of país, all vines, more or less. That is the main thing, and they're 85% is in Maule. So I think with the old vines, they are much more, how to say, in balance. I think so. They resist also. I got last year I compared the last 5 years. I compared País, and also we graft into País. We got graft Carignan, Chenin Blanc, Mourvedre too, and also I got you know, clonal selection about Cabernet Sauvignon Carmener that is classical. And I see in the last 5 years in Chile, we got 17 was really warm, 18 was really cold. But the difference of the harvest with the same sugar between old vines and new vines, I will say, or the root system of the País, you know, and in a cool year compared to a warm year, I got only 1 week of difference with the same amount of sugar. And in the other variety, I got 1 month. So that says also they resist in a much better way the difference of every year, and I truly believe in that, and we believe it so badly that I think we're the only guys in Chile. We are planting País. We started in 2000. It's quite weird because we still got a lot of País, but we really believe in variety, and we need to learn because we only País in Chile. So we just planted 2 years ago, and the idea was dry farming. But in 19 we put a little bit of water by hand, you know. So the idea is to 2-3 years with a little bit of water depends of the year, and from this year to 21 we leave it like that, you know. Try to the root system goes down. So I think in the past you will find a lot of answer to the future.
Yeah, nicely on to Mariana, because I know you feel exactly the same as you know. I think you've said that before, Mariana. So for you, with you know, with your grafting, because it's I'm always surprised actually quite how few people graft onto all these wonderful old rootstocks that you have in Chile and as you have there. So you know, can you tell us a little bit about your grafting and how that's taken off, putting these great varieties onto old rootstocks?
Yes, actually listening to Christian, I feel very much identified. I mean, our concepts are very close to what he already has explained. We are located, especially the regrafting in these old vineyards is in the north of Mendoza, in an area where it's called Desierto de la Base. So it's a very dry weather, and we have sometimes water every 20 days. I mean, it's very difficult sometimes to keep the humidity, and especially we did the regrafting in a 80-year-old vineyard of cereza. That is like a país, you know, in a way. This is a criolla, we call it here in Argentina. And the establishment, the stability, and the expression of the root is fantastic. So what we have done is to make use of those amazing roots and established roots to plant some grapes that we believe that we had some opportunities for great expression, and those especially Mediterranean grapes like Mourvedre, Grenache, Carignan, and we played a bit with an Italian like the Roldego. We've had amazing results with expression, and as Christian said, what we have observed is that it was immediate, the adaptation. The roots reacted amazingly. And we regrafted here. The regrafting happens in September, October, November. We usually try to do it in October, not too early, not too late, you know, because of the late frost or if it is too hot, it's not doesn't work either. It requires a lot of, again, labor. So regrafting to be successful, one of the most important things is all the work you have after that. So most of the sprouts are very delicate, and the wind and everything. So you need to do a lot of post work, I would say.
Yeah.
And I definitely agree with Christian. I think that in the past there are many answers. We need to learn from our past and work for the future. So for me, that is about, being organic or being, with this low intervention means, in a way, working as our ancestor did, without so much of, chemicals and everything. But then why? To take care of the future. So that is the reason.
Yeah, that's I love that quote, actually. Yeah. I'm aware of time. I know we're going to go on to the winery in a minute, but I wanted to talk or just ask, maybe again, Mariana and Thibaut, Thibaut, I'm going to ask you this about. So obviously you're certified organic, and are you fully certified biodynamic as well, or is it certain parts that have?
No, in Chile we're 100% biodynamic, and Argentina we're 100% organic.
Okay,
yeah.
And
No, we have here, Alistair, when you talk about the challenge here, our challenge here is with the birds, with the fox, with the rabbits, but mainly with the beets. The only thing we have problem with to be complete organic is with the beets. And as Mariana says, here all the viticultures in the mountains never put agrochemics to their vines. That was like completely here. It's weird to put something in the very old vineyards in the mountains. They don't have even access to put something on the vines. They just put organic fertilization, and it's fantastic the way they really understand and learn and read the vines. I'm learning. I'm completely in love how they work with those vines. And in 2014, when I was just arriving in the Calchaquí valleys, I live with some of these families in Tucumán, and I get completely mad about the criolla. At that time, there was any winemaker, any winery making criolla wines here in the north. Was only one producer in Argentina. Right. And I just, because by casual I start making this wine, I get, and actually the wine was very good, completely interesting, completely different of what I was used to. Remind me a lot wines from Croatia, from Greece, from other autochthonous varieties. Yeah. And yeah, well, here I don't have certification of anything. I'm not biodynamic. I don't have organic. It's like, again, it's rational viticulture, natural viticulture. And I invite everyone to come to the Calchaquí valleys and they see by their own eyes how we treat here the vines. I don't believe too much in the certification either. Sorry, I say it. And we have our own, let's say, certification that is being conscious with ourselves on what the plant needs at that time.
Yeah.
Treated, is probably a certification, but we think that we don't.
Lost you, Agustin. Oh, you're frozen a bit, but I think I think I got your point there, and I think this brings me on to the certification point, and I have different views as well in how I view the necessity for certification. And I know, Mariana, you're not certified, but you follow your organic principles. And Thibaut, as you say, you are certified biodynamic, certified organic as well in Argentina. On that, you often hear a lot about the cost implications, Thibaut, of going from farming conventionally to farming, biodynamically, and there's an increase. How did you find it, or how's it been over there? Do you think it's more expensive to farm biodynamically or organically, in the long run? Less?
I think, well, first of all, the certification is a good point for me, just for two stuff. The first thing that we have 3 times per year an external audit. Like we have some external requirements, external opinions on how to drive our estate, and it's always interesting and useful. And also because if you're not certified, when you have some trouble in your estate, you can always have the solution of using prohibited products, whereas when you are certified, it's just prohibited, and you don't have the temptation, I would say, to use it.
Yeah.
Regarding the costs, in Chile, for example, I have no comparison because in Chile we are biodynamic since 10 years, but in Argentina I've done the conversion step by step since the last 8 years. And what I saw is that we have between 5 to 10% extra costs in organic during 3-4 years till the yields of the estates of the plots get even. When we have the 3, 4, 5 years of conversion, when you have to find good balance between the manure, between the irrigation, between the control of the weeds. And when you get the good point, the balance, so you get almost the same yields, and you have almost no differences between organic and conventional.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of tallies with what I've heard, because it's that adaptation process, isn't it? It's sort of, people always liken it to, if you have a vineyard that's been pumped full of chemicals, it's like a human body that's been pumped full of chemicals. You know, the more you put into it, the less it can deal with it. You take that away, you know, if you've been riddled with drugs, it takes a while to get rid of it, to detoxify, to get all those toxins out, to produce to the same level again. So yeah, that tallies with what I've heard. And for Mariana, for you, I imagine obviously there's quite a difference in scale between Thibaut and Francois Louton and Mariana Onofre in Mendoza with the size of your operations. For you, is it a cost thing for not getting certified, or is it you just don't feel you need to put it on your labels, or what are your views on it?
Well, I think that I understand to what point, and actually eventually we understand that for international sales, the certified organic concept is very important. We have a bit of the concept, like Agustin mentioned, it's our home. The earth is our home. So for me, is especially the cost of the certification is important, considering our vineyard is very small. We manage it ourselves. And for us, it's a life philosophy. We grow our vegetables. We have our olive oil. We have our fruit. We don't want to use something that is wrong for us. You know, it's taking care of the earth, taking care of ourselves. We started working, with all these challenges, looking for solutions. As Thibaut said, we also have sheep. We started to use other techniques in order to have what we want. Of course, it's difficult because it is a transition, and sometimes it's like, okay, what do we do? Well, sometimes we need to modify the date of harvest. If we see that things are getting complicated, we try to go for the solutions that are good for the fruit and for us. Yeah. And don't forget that when you are taking care, when I always say that we are farming organic because we want to leave a legacy, because we want our earth to be alive. And that is our main concept. So, of course, I don't know, who knows? At some point we might certify it. So far, we don't feel it is necessary. We are very small. Our commercialization still is very small. Yeah. So we believe in our principles so far.
Yeah, that's sort of pragmatic way of seeing things. So I think we're going to have to flip now. I knew this would happen. Time will go so quickly because I've got so many questions to ask you all. We'll have to do another session, but we're going to just flip over into the winery now, having sort of focused so far. I think we've got 10 minutes left. We can look on the winery now. And I think my question here, I'll leave it open to whoever wants to answer, because I think you'll all have quite strong opinions on this. We've seen... in the past, probably 15, 20 years, we've seen a huge shift with regards the thoughts on oak. We certainly know in Argentina and in Chile in the past, and in Uruguay as well, there's been a heavy oak influence in many of the wines. And how important on lower intervention for you as producers is reducing oak to sort of push that drinkability factor through the wine, so using alternative vessels. I don't know if anyone wants to talk on anyone. I don't want to pick anyone, but I'm sure you've all got something to say.
Well, I can say personally about the oak. For me, the oak is just goes with the low intervention. For me, the oak is something in the wine since I don't know how many years ago, and it's probably the best way to grow up the wines. I forgot the word. Sorry.
Age.
To age the wine. Sorry for that. Yeah. So for me, low intervention is more or less the same principle than in the vines. You know, it's like reading the wine, what needs the wine, and treat it on that way. I mean, for example, on the yeast, we from the very beginning we make spontaneous fermentation, and why? First of all, because we are assured that the fermentation get done completely. First of all, and second of all, because really we make a lot of trials. My thesis and on my master was of spontaneous fermentation. I love the yeast, and for me the yeast is the expression of the terroir. Really, I mean, why we're going to add an yeast that is coming from a lab in another country, and not the yeast that already the grape has. And when you really, another thing that we really believe, that when you treat well and in a natural way the vines, then the yeasts are very strong and the fermentation get done. And on the opposite, when you have a lot of agrochemics on the vineyards, then the yeast died because they're like you're killing it with agrochemicals, and then the fermentation get very hard to be complete. So for me, it means a lot of a natural way of treating the vines. If you make spontaneous fermentation in the wines or not, it's something that we believe. But then the oak is part of the winemaking. For sure, there are some wines that goes beautiful without any oak and without anything. We make the salvaje wines we make are like that. Yeah. But then there are some wines that the aging of 24 months in barrels goes perfectly, and why not, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Agustin. I suppose I probably should have added, I think I probably meant more new oak influence than maybe older oak. And actually, on your point though, with yeasts, I want to ask Thibaut something about that, because I know, and this is going on to another point that you'll all have experience in with zero sulfur wines. I'm not going to call them natural wines, just zero added sulfites wines. I think, Thibaut, I think maybe you made a range of zero sulfite wines in Argentina, but you used cultured yeast instead of indigenous yeast. Am I right there?
Yes. We used to use 100% indigenous yeasts, except some Cabernet, but usually we use no added yeast at all. But since we work 100% with no sulfites added for all our red wines, just at the end of we have some cuvées which remain without added sulfur, and the other cuvées are vinificated without sulfur, but we just add sulfur at the end of the vinification, which has been very convenient for us to work on the tannins of the Malbec and Chacailles, and Malbec and Côte from Chacailles, which are sometimes a bit harsh. Yeah. Working without sulfur help us to manage to pilot with a lot of to pilot very well all the extraction of the tannins. So in order to work without sulfur, we use selected yeast. We use two selected yeast. One first yeast that we put the first day in order to take the middle, which does not ferment very well, but colonize the place. And the second day we put common yeast, which is going to ferment very well to the end of the fermentation. And since 3 years now, we are making a selection of our own yeast. We have 12 yeast now, and that we have been selected from our estates in Argentina and Spain. Okay. And we hope that next year we're gonna use our own yeast selection from Chacailles. But we have to prepare the yeast and have a very clean fermentation in order to work without sulfites.
It's interesting to see that sort of different opinion, the sort of strong indigenous yeast. And I think, you work obviously with indigenous yeast and others, but it's interesting how certain circumstances can dictate that actually different yeast strains can be useful. Now, I'm aware we haven't got long, but there's something, Pablo, that I wanted that you mentioned now we're in the winery, and you mentioned when we spoke about your filtration, obviously being lower intervention in the winery. Talk me through your filtration system, because I don't believe you actually have one.
Yeah, well, I don't have a filter just for bottling at the end, But what I do is the old way, no? Just rack the wine 1, 2, 4, 3 times, but trying to keep in the wine with no oxygen.
Yeah.
We use nitrogen to keep the wine, you know, but because we rack many times, so it's the oxidation can be a problem. So we use nitrogen to take out the oxygen from the wine. The other thing, we also use oak for some wines. I love all French oak barrels, more than 3 years old, but I use the barrels for 10 years. If the barrel is healthy, have no flavors or odd flavors or aromas, I keep using for a long time. And as Thibault, I do my fermentations without any sulfur, and at the end I keep some wines with sulfur, and the other wines I sulfite, you know, at the end of the malolactic fermentation. But for example, the Anarchia, that was the first Tanat I produced without any sulfur added and native yeast. At the end of the malolactic fermentation, I cool down the wine at 4 degrees for 6 months, and stabilizes the wine and clean the wine. And then that's the way I try to clean the wine. And then for start the fermentation every year, I use old wine. I take an old wine that have old yeast, and I put I don't know 5% of old wine in the new wine. Let's start the fermentation. And it's the way I keep my native yeast, you know.
Okay, that's fascinating. Oh, it's so sad. We've only got 1 minute left to go, but I'm going to ask Christian. I'm going to give you 1 minute to answer this question that we've been sent in. The question is, do you see low intervention as a trend, or is it here to stay in countries like Chile and Argentina?
1 minute. No, I think it's here to stay. And I think also Chile, Argentina, I will say more new world countries that now we want to offer, maybe like with Chile, we look to other countries as a good value for money, but not as a wine that got history, that got identity, and that got good products. And when I say good product, I talk about identity of the places, that you just drink a wine from Chile, you're drinking from a specific place. And I think the low intervention, not trend, but low intervention wine show in a better way the places from Argentina, from Chile, from Uruguay. And I think that will be here to stay. And I hope and that will put all this part of the world in the level that it should be. And I think that I feel it. And it's more people looking for it. Because when there's a few varieties that they're more commodity, maybe, to say a Cabernet Sauvignon from different places, it's more a commodity than maybe a criolla or a different variety that is more unique from the place. I think that will stay.
And that was perfect. That was exactly 1 minute, Christian. You're very good with your timekeeping. So, guys, sadly, our session's come to an end. So, thank you all for joining. We've got so much more we could talk about, but that was a really fascinating session. And thank you to all the attendees, but most of all to our panelists here. So thank you very much, guys. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. And for the attendees, enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you very much.